Well, let's talk about our big topic of today, and that is planning for retirement. Like I said, I'm sure there are many questions. Firstly, how should one go about planning? Secondly, why should one plan, especially when one is really young? And thirdly, even if they do plan, how can you decide on the amount? How do you save on that? Where do you invest? So all of these questions is what we'll be discussing, of course, answering your questions and queries as well. Vishal Dhawan, the CEO and founder of Plan Ahead Wealth Advisors, now joins us on the show. Vishal, thank you so much for taking our time today, to talk to our viewers about, I think, a topic that's, I guess, very essential. Many a times, we seem to ignore that aspect of our life, that milestone of our life, saying that, it's a couple of years away. And yeah, I guess if you are under 30, all the more you'd barely want to think about retirement at this age. You're thinking about many other things, your career, your family, your business, etc. So retirement is really right at the bottom. In fact, I was reading a report which was published late last year where they said that 89% of Indians are unprepared for retirement. So to start with, Vishal, how early or soon is it to start, thinking of retirement and the money you need when you reach that juncture?
Yeah, so thank you for having me over. I think this is a topic that needs, very urgent intervention. Somehow what tends to happen is that everyone knows it's important to plan for it, but it tends to get kind of pushed back on priority. And I think there are at least three reasons why, one needs to start off early. So I think number one is the fact that you get the benefit of compounding straight away when you start off early. So if you start off with a much smaller amount of money, it can grow to a much larger corpus by the time you actually get to retirement. And we need to keep in mind nowadays that people are retiring much earlier than they earlier would, either because of choice or because the economy and the kind of jobs that they are in today cause you to get burnt out much younger than what you were earlier. So number one, the benefit of compounding. Number two is ensure that the way you're planning for retirement is very systematic. And what I mean by systematic is start off as soon as you get your first salary check. The reason why I say that is because what you do end up finding straight away with investing or saving money is that you always find ways to spend what you have in your bank account. So if you can make it disappear from your bank account very quickly at the start, then you'll only spend what is left over. So typically, I do suggest that everyone looks at least 20% of their income getting saved and getting moved out of their bank account very, very quickly after it comes in. And last but not the least, tax planning is not equal to retirement planning. Very often, I think there is a belief that if I'm saving to save some taxes, then that's good enough for me to take care of my retirement. I think it helps to a certain extent, but retirement planning is a lot more than that.
Well, yeah, and I guess, you understand why that notion is there, because most of the products that are eligible for a deduction from your income are oriented towards helping you save for your retirement, for your later years, be it, maybe a provident fund, a national pension scheme, a PPF, etc. So, Vishal, you mentioned 20% of your income. That should essentially be set aside right at the beginning so that you know that this money is not available to you for your, for your expenses or your spending. So, should... do you think that it's necessary, and first I'll talk about it from an early age, that, when you're in your 20s or maybe in your early 30s, do you think it's necessary then to sort of have an amount in mind that, you think you will need at the age of 65, 70? I mean, I think nowadays the retirement age is 65, 70 and not 60 anymore. Do you think that you should keep that amount in mind, or do you think that at least in the earlier part of your life, just start off with that 20% of your income?
So I think this is a very important question because there's always confusion on, what's the right approach. And I think we find that when you're starting off, it's a good idea to just work with a percentage of your income as a number, because what you'll find is that over a period of time, your needs will evolve. Some of it will just happen because, as you start off, you then get married, have a family, your responsibilities increase. Your lifestyle gets upgraded. All of those things mean that your expenses will keep changing, in a very significant manner from where they were when you started off. And sometimes it's very hard to actually start off using that principle, saying that if I know that I need a corpus of, say, 5 crores at an X age, that'll take care of my retirement, because it just seems so difficult to achieve that 5 crores. So I would say that when you're just starting off, it's good to use a percentage of your income number. I think somewhere in your mid-30s, you should actually move back and start to recalibrate and say, okay, now I need to know what is that corpus that I need for retirement. Because now I have to figure out what kind of a lifestyle I'm going to lead, what kind of city I'm going to retire to. I think all of that starts to become a little clearer in everyone's mind as time passes. And with respect to, one more element in terms of, retirement ages, I think the other thing that's changing very rapidly is life expectancy. So while you're, maybe you can work longer, unfortunately, as far as retirement is concerned, most people are also living much longer. And therefore, their retirement money has to take them much further as compared to, let's say, our parents or grandparents who may have lived for a shorter period of time.
Okay, so maybe in the beginning, start off with just a simple percentage. It's easier as well to understand that. And when you have just a fixed number, you know that this is the amount that you have to set aside. So it's easier. Later on, mid-30s, is when you should start thinking about maybe an exact amount. But how do you come to that is the second question, because obviously your lifestyle at 35, 40 is very different from what it could be and what it could look like in 65, 70 in terms of your responsibilities, obligations, and obviously your income stream. Plus, the world itself is changing at an extremely rapid pace, I mean, earlier we used to see changes and disruptions come by every 3 decades, now maybe a decade. The pace of change as well is extremely fast. So, Vishal, in light of that, what all should these individuals consider? And also, I mean, this is not a task, I suppose, that they can sit down on their own.
So I think the first thing that everyone needs to do is they need to get granular as far as their expenses are concerned. What we find invariably is that, when you talk to people today and ask them how much do they spend per month, you get these big round numbers that they talk about. Depending on their income, they say 25,000, 50,000, 1 lakh, 1.5 lakhs. And what you do is that when you get down to a very granular level, saying, okay, so how much do you spend on, say, your utilities, right? Your electricity bill, your phone bills, what does that come to? How much do you spend on groceries? How much do you spend on travel? How much do you spend on, education for children? I think as you get granular, it becomes much easier to deal with, because then you can be able to estimate much better that which of these expenses will actually continue to be at these levels, when you're, say, 58, or you're 60, which of them will actually decline and which of them will actually go up. Say, for example, you could find that your medical expenses will go up as you get older. Maybe the expenses around your dependents will reduce as you get older. So once you get granular, I think it becomes much easier to look at. Once you've got those granular numbers in, then you have to apply an inflation rate that seems to be a fair way to inflate these numbers. Because I think the biggest enemy for all retirement portfolios will be estimating what inflation is going to be like. And inflation comes in 2 forms. One is just what you and me read about, the consumer price inflation, which is, it ranges anywhere between 4 to 6% typically per year over the last few years. And then you have lifestyle inflation, which kicks in, because all of us are constantly trying to upgrade our lives. If we are buying a certain type of mobile phone, we now want a fancier mobile. If you're buying a certain type of if you're taking a certain type of holiday domestically, we then want to travel internationally. So I think that lifestyle inflation also kicks in, and therefore there's no option but to get very granular in terms of trying to estimate that corpus. And last but not the least, don't underestimate how long you can live. I think many of us will want to die younger, saying that, if I live till 70 and I'm healthy, I'm happy. But it's not a controllable variable, so you might end up finding that you have to live, you may need to plan to live till 80 or 85 or 90, because there's so much of advancement around the medical side also happening simultaneously that we could just end up, being retired for so much longer.
Okay, well, we'll discuss more on this topic right after this short break. All the products that are available as well for retirement and answer your questions and queries. Vishal, request you to stay on with us. Be right back after a quick break. Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now. Vishal, before I get to our viewer questions and queries, I just wanted to talk to you about the different products out there. There's EPF, there's NPS, there's the PM Vaya Vandana Yojana. These are just some of the retirement products. So, once you've determined the figures that you want to invest, whether it's 20% or, whether you recognize that there is an X amount of money that you need to reach by the time you retire, the question is right now, where should you park that money? So, what's your view on these three, specific products, and also, your view on maybe some other products out there that are better suited for investing for retirement?
It's actually crucial to separate your retirement into phases. There is what we would call an accumulation phase, which is really about collecting money to build that corpus. And then there is this second phase, which is called distribution phase, where you're actually withdrawing from your corpus to be able to support your retirement needs. I think one of the things that we suggest to investors is that don't buy a retirement product in your accumulation phase just simply because it has the word retirement written in it. I think there are lots of products that are available which can still be used for retirement planning without having a retirement word written in them. For example, if you look at diversified mutual funds, they may not be retirement specific, but they can be used for the purpose of retirement. I think the EPF is an excellent tool in terms of saving towards retirement, and so is the National Pension Scheme. I think both of them work extremely well in the accumulation phase. The NPS, of course, comes with the added advantage that it allows you to pick your mix of assets at the underlying level in the NPS. So do you want, an X amount of equity and a Y amount of corporate bonds and a Z amount of government securities in it? So depending on your age, you can actually mix and match. You can pick your manager. So there's a lot of customization that's possible depending on how you want to save for your retirement through the NPS. In addition to some of the tax breaks that are available when you make the investment as well. As far as the EPF is concerned, it's traditionally been a very powerful tool because it tends to offer a rate of interest which is significantly higher than what you get elsewhere. Even today, for example, you're getting an 8.5% tax-free on a PF, unless you're earning a large amount of money, because there was some recent budget provisions where if your contribution to EPF is above 2.5 lakh rupees a year now, the interest earned on that is taxable. But outside of that segment of individuals, for most other people, you'll find that the EPF and the NPS are excellent tools to actually take care of the accumulation phase of your retirement. The PMDV Bye-Bye is a good product when you're actually withdrawing out. So once you've retired, you need a regular monthly income to support your expenses every month. That's the time that this product works well. Unfortunately, it comes with a cap. So you're only allowed to put a maximum of 15 lakhs there. And therefore, what you need to do is, if your requirements are going to be larger, which in most cases it will be, then you may have to supplement your PMDV Bye-Bye with certain other products during the retirement phase to actually give you an income. So for example, if you look at a mutual fund, you can set up what is called a systematic withdrawal plan there to essentially, get a regular monthly income and take care of your retirement needs. I think the underlying principle across all of this is to ensure that you get your asset allocation right. I think most often we find that when people think about retirement, they start to believe that they should have zero risk in their portfolio. But you need to keep in mind that your retirement is going to be very long and inflation is your biggest enemy. So you definitely need to allocate a portion of your money to growth assets, which can actually beat inflation. So you may need to look at, options like, equities. You may need to look at options like gold. You may need to look at options like the real estate investment trusts. If you're someone in a higher tax bracket, you might need to look at tax-free bonds. So there's a whole bunch of different options available depending on the phase that you are in terms of your retirement. But avoid, getting so conservative that you end up finding that you run out of your money before your life expectancy.
All right. Okay, well, I think let's take on board some questions and queries from our viewers then, and let's take on board our first question. Nidesh Jain writes into us saying, I'm 49 years old and I've invested in 5 mutual funds, 2 large caps, 2 mid caps, and 1 small cap via SIP. I've also been investing in stocks since the last 3 months. Now, his question is a very interesting one. Should I stop my SIP in the small cap fund, which by the way has turned negative for me in 29%, and invest in stocks on my own? Well, just like many retail investors out there, he has been trying his hand at direct investing in stocks. And I suppose, given the fact that it has given him confidence to replace an SIP in a small cap fund and go out there on his own, he's doing well for himself for now. So, Vishal, what would your advice be to folks like Nitesh out there?
So I think we need to be very careful about the recency bias that comes into investing. It's a very natural thing to happen that, if I've done something and it's worked for me for the last 3 months, I should do both a repetition of that, and the second is I should do it with larger amounts of money as well. And I think very often, when markets are going up like they've been for the last few months, there is a tendency to maybe get a little overconfident about one's own abilities. Our experience around investing has traditionally been that, investments need to get monitored very, very carefully. And if you're doing, investments in small caps especially, I think you have to be very comfortable with the volatility that comes with small caps. So I would say for someone who's 49 years old, it's a good idea to have small caps in the portfolio. I think if you're saving towards retirement, it's probably at least 10 years away. It gives you enough time to get over this volatility, but avoid replacing a small cap mutual fund with small cap stocks. I think that can expose you to an abnormally high level of risk. If you're finding that the specific small cap fund that you have bought into has for some reason underperformed, then maybe it's a fund selection issue. Because if you look at small cap indices in general, over the last 12 months, for example, small caps have done significantly better than the Sensex. They're up, somewhere in the region of about 110 odd % against the Sensex, which is up only about 80%. But again, these big, large numbers of 100% and 80% and all of that, we know are not sustainable over longer periods. So what will end up happening is a normalization will take place. And that's when having an SIP strategy like he already has and being diversified by having different funds and different managers will be very helpful. So I would certainly suggest that, he avoid replacing this small cap SIP strategy with direct equity investing.
All right. Okay, well, I think with that, we are out of time. So, Vishal, we'll have to let you go on that note. And, it's all the time we have for queries as well. Thank you so much once again for joining us today on the show and, talking about a whole host of topics around retirement. I hope our viewers have some important takeaways as well and will get into retirement planning mode ASAP.